Good morning. This is Jackie, and this is my mother, Sally.
Good morning.
Good morning. And this is Jackson Rose, a podcast all about the makers who make things.
And it's a year old now.
It's a year old. And I'm very grateful for this format because this podcast in particular will be a lot of us reflecting on fortifying ourselves in these times that we find ourselves in. And this podcast, you're all welcome. There's no right or wrong way to be in this podcast. I will say that I'm going to talk a little bit about I'm going to talk a lot about my personal life. So if you're just a strictly knitter, expecting that format of finished objects and whips, that's not what this is going to be. But
I have to say on a light note, that's what the fast forward button is. Scroll, find the knits, tune in.
Yeah.
But that's not what we're about. No. Today is about heart and really being
right.
Sharing our heart.
Right. So we're sitting here in the sun and we know the light will do what the light will do. And one of the things that I recognize about I often start with a poem, and I've been having a lot of opportunities to share poetry and have community around poetry. And I'm sharing one that was shared with me recently. This comes from Alexandra, who is a Portuguese woman that I know from Patreon, and English is her second language. And she so generously and bravely shared this with us, and I thought it was so beautiful. And the poet is new to me, and his name is Robert Lax, and he was a contemporary of Thomas Merton. And so I can only assume that his spiritual life was a very important part of his reason for writing. And this is a prologue to, I'm speaking from not seeing it myself. I've been to the library and ordered it, but he wrote a book about the circus, and the circus as a metaphor for life, of coming along, setting up the tent, having the delights, taking the tent down and moving on. That this like temporal quality of the present moment. So he says at the prologue to this work called The Circus of the Sun, and in the beginning was love. Love made a sphere, and all things grew within it. The sphere then encompassed beginnings and endings, beginning and end. Love had a compass whose whirling dance traced out a sphere of love in the void. In the center thereof rose a fountain. And I'm gonna read it again. In the beginning was love. Love made a sphere. The earth. Love made a sphere, and all things, the universe, the womb,
The circle of life.
the sun, all things grew within it. The sphere then encompassed beginnings and endings, beginning and end. Love had a compass whose whirling dance traced out a sphere of love in the void. In the center thereof rose a fountain. And so thank you, Alexandra.
Oh, that's just beautiful.
Yeah.
I have been so taken by this circle and
Oh, of course, yes.
in my work, but wow.
So, right at the outset, the counterforce to anything that is dark and terrifying and fearful is love. Love is always, I don't know what to do. Love. I don't know what, I'm afraid. Love. That is the action. That is the thought. That is the way to be. That is like the grounding principle. And I think it's the unifying principle that we can all agree on too. And I'm going to start with a couple stories about love. And and it's about our family and our situation, which I share with people in person, but I've never shared on a YouTube video, because it's always felt, again, there's been no reason. But I guess I now feel like there's a reason, because I feel like I have experience with profound fear and uncertainty. Mm-hmm. And that is, I'm telling the story of, my husband. In 2012, we had 2 young children. They were going into 3rd grade and 5th grade, and we were going on vacation. And I'd been married for maybe 18 years. And and he was a vital, charismatic, amazing human being, and healthy as a horse. And there was some tiny, tiny little blood vessel that popped in his heart, and I found him outside, inflated and blue and unconscious. And I gave him, CPR, and the ambulance came, and the neighbors came, and so there was. And immediately my mother and sister dashed in to take care of the children, and we went away in an ambulance. And the medical professionals immediately put him induced a coma and froze his brain so it wouldn't swell, because he wasn't getting any oxygen to his brain. And they give you 3 days to have your brain sort of rest in that state, and then they slowly warm you to see how your brain is doing. And when after those 3 days, there was nothing. There was no brain activity whatever, except in the very back, the stem of his brain, which is what keeps your lungs breathing and your heart pumping, but there's nothing going on at all. And I'm not trying to revisit trauma and pain on you. I'm not trying to say I'm unique in this. But it was an impossibly hard time. And there was so much rushing in of community from strangers and loved ones and family and friends, etc. And still it was a time in my life, and this is strange to say, but it was a time in my life where I was looking for comfort. And it was funny, I went back to the Greek stories, and there was a story of Prometheus chained to the rock, and every day an eagle would come and eat his spleen. And that was how my life felt. It felt it felt unbearably painful every moment of every waking moment. And so I've set the stage for pain, suffering, uncertainty that I know. And I am not trying to go into the detail of it, but safe to say that I got through it through family. They couldn't fix it, they couldn't change it. They could be present with me and love me, friends and family. And I want to say only enough that will be of use to you. I want to fast forward out of some of, and you'll know if I'm fast forwarding too much, but I want to have respect for the man too, and not reveal his whole story. So it turns out when I took him off life support and we were at hospice, he came back to life. He just snapped out of whatever and came back to life. Yes. And absolutely no explanation. The medical profession has no explanation. But he did have a traumatic brain injury from not having enough oxygen to his brain, which changes you. And out of respect to him and my family, I don't really need to talk about all of that with you. Safe to say that safe to say that it was a time of immense pressure and conflict and turmoil, and it was very difficult, and it did end. And this is, I remember that he had therapy, all sorts of therapies. But one day a woman looked at me and she said to me, "You don't breathe. You're not, and the caregiver, you need to actually be healthier than you are." And she suggested I go to yoga. And I would go to yoga, and it was the simplest thing. All I had to do was lay on a mat, lay on my back in Shavasana, and breathe. And for an hour, I felt I can lay on my back and breathe, and I felt safe. And I worked with an incredible doctor who specialized in helping families where someone in the family had a traumatic brain injury. And my truth I'm telling this most intimate truth to you because I want to help you. I want to tell my story. If it helps one person, I'm glad. I've already lived through it. And what anybody's opinions of it or their version of the story is completely fine with me. This is just my telling. Is that I laid on that mat and I closed my eyes and I listened to my body, and my body gave me the information I needed. My body told me what my next steps were. It was an embodied voice that came from within and came with all this pain. And that led to a divorce, and it led to big concerns about the well-being of my children and whatnot. And it came to pass that once a week, my children, would go and spend time with their father. And that was very frightening to me. And how we responded to that was we were just depleted. And also I had strangers in our house raking leaves for us to be kind, or bringing sets of sheets to us.
Building steps
for us. They brought us so much food. I had to hide food in the oven so the person wouldn't feel bad, so they'd know that we appreciated their gift. So I have been on the receiving end of such love and generosity. So those of you who've lost everything in a fire, those of you who've haven't been able to have drinking water, whatever the case may be, there's no hierarchy of like what's hard or what's painful. That's irrelevant. I'm not trying to say I have had it worse than anyone else. It's just what I'm saying is our response was we had, and I think some of you have been around here for a while, know we had these things called Friday nights. And we just invited absolutely everybody we knew, women.
I mean, that first guest list was an email that went out to like 100 people. And
120 people.
120 people.
Mm-hmm. And it was always just like the librarian, the person at yoga,
the neighbor,
the kid's art teacher, a neighbor, whoever. They weren't people we knew really well. They were just people where we were like, there's something I like about you. And this is what I'm going to tell you, is that every Friday night we'd host them, and we would host them for dinner, dessert, flowers, candles, whatever, fire. And it was, it was from 6 to 9, and at 9 they had to leave, and my mother and my sister and I would put it on together as a team. And we learned how to work as a team, and we also learned how to open the door and be like, my job when I open the door, I don't know who's coming, it's not who I'm choosing, it's to serve them, to welcome them. They are the most important thing in the room. They are why I'm here. And to like give that back and to let go of my fear and worry and the pain.
The perfection of having to entertain at a perfect level.
Right.
All of that.
Yeah, all of that like surface was shattered. And it was so beautiful to watch what happened and how it was always, it was always 10 people. It was always the right amount of food. It was these women would come who didn't know each other, and we would end up having synergy after synergy after synergy, week after week.
And some of the precious ones were when it would be just one person, but you realize, and we were thinking, oh, we'll just cancel. But we don't. We never canceled. And it was the one person who, like, I needed this so badly tonight. They came in here with, and then left feeling like someone listened to them.
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
And anytime there's been like a profound pain in my life, it boils down to bearing witness, listening, and loving. And so I'm telling you all of this to tell you that I think one of the things that these times, I don't actually care who anybody, if you're listening, who you voted for or whatever, I think we could all agree that we are in a time of turmoil. And I think we can all agree that we're in a time of pain. And I think we can all agree that there's a great deal of fear and uncertainty happening around us.
Can I just stop for one moment? Because that is like, that passage that you read to me is life-changing for me. But I just also want to go back and just fill in, because this leaves this, that thank God, and through whatever the higher beings, the story goes on in other people's telling, that the boys who we nurtured through these difficult years, their father was given health and vitality and a second chance on life. He may not be part of our sphere, but from what we can tell now, he is living a beautiful life. And I'm so grateful for that, because that's love, wishing him every best thing that could happen to him. And, it just didn't work.
For sure. He always acted with dignity. He always acted with, he had a noble nature.
Yes. Yes, and I just wanted that to be as part of our story, because we each have our own telling of it, and in hearing it again, I'm like, yes, that's what made us able to open the house up for Friday nights and for where we are now, all of it.
And you can imagine that people's opinions on how people had opinions on whether I stayed married or got a divorce. And you can imagine that I lost people because of just deciding to get a divorce, and anybody, and people can have their opinions. Opinion is not the same thing as being. Opinion is sort of like, it just is what it is.
And then now is the sharing and the great joy of recognizing the young men that came out of this are just incredible human beings that have been influenced by both families, both sides of their family.
Yeah. And so I often, when COVID came along, I felt better prepared for it, because my life had already been shattered once. And I knew what an effort it was. And the effort is to be more courageously loving, and being courageously loving can mean that you get a divorce sometimes.
Yes.
It doesn't mean you accept all behaviors or anything like that. So in these times, I have to say, and I suppose we can fast forward 10 years, I have fallen in love again. Yes. And I have, and I am so devoted to my family, and I love them so much. And yet I want to and need to and have taken this step of moving out of this home and moving away. And so, that's not easy to just say why, and it's not, but why is it not easy to just say why? Because I guess I feel like, I don't love lightly,
Yes.
And so I'm sorry for the pause, because I don't have a script, and I believe in in real life, I believe in empty space. I believe in the pause. I believe in waiting. Yes. And it feels it feels like on camera somehow that's a failing, and that you have to have an agenda, and you have to have what you're going to say.
That's not how conversation goes.
No.
When you sit in the living room with somebody, you don't know where it's going, but being able to give people chance to take in what you said, and then to leave pause for them. Mm-hmm. To say what they want to say. And this is what you do in a podcast. Mm-hmm. It's not barrel forward. Mm-hmm. You could, but.
So I feel that there might have been something in me, in being a knitter, that was knitting to soothe myself and overcome some trauma, and just sit there with the yarn and knit and be present with myself. I also feel like there's something with the knitting for me that was a joy of finding something I was good at, and something. But where I have come with the knitting now is I have so much knitting. I have made so many beautiful things, and I don't need to keep proving over and over what it is. And I feel like the beauty for me is shifting out of the knits and into the human beings. So I can tell the story of a knit, and this is maybe what some of you who've been around have sensed, is it's how it came to be, the serendipities and the stories that it contains. And it is also, I'm willing to take those knits and give them away, because I definitely believe the thing that if I have to look back on my knitting career, if I have to look back on my knitting, it is not the pile of wool that I have in closets that I'm having to move and shift around. It is the relationships and experiences and growth and opportunities, and it literally brought me, I'm sure it brought me to the love that I have now with this man, because I don't have a direct line that I'm telling you, but just the fact that I was born and raised in Madison and lived here my whole life, I would have never met him, because knitting caused me to be mobile. Mm-hmm. So I think that shift, while I think knitting 101 for me is some personal skill building, some personal I feel like I'm really self-expressing, that feels good. And knitting 2.0, and I hate using computer metaphors right now, but the next layer is, how does knitting express love? I want it to express love and beauty. And so and I want, and where do those things exist? They exist aesthetically in garments, but they also exist in our relationships with each other. And that is incredibly important, and why I do everything. And it's like coaxing beauty out of yarn is no different than coaxing safety, trust, and ease out of a relationship with you and a stranger. And I feel so lucky as my career as a teacher and all the training I did to recover and move toward thriving from the wounding in my own life gives me the capacity to risk more in my way I show up. And sometimes it's exhausting for me, and sometimes it's terribly hurtful. So for instance, when I started this channel last year, I saw on social media a whole strain of hideous criticisms of me, and it was personal attacks on my dancing, my appearance, my vanity, I don't even remember anymore. It was so...
It's just vile.
It was vile. And there were comments like, something like, I show my content to my daughter to show her what not to be. She just wants people to, you name it. I don't know. And it was interesting to see how much it wasn't like me. But at the same time, whatever, I can't do anything about it. And I can think now, though, when I praise, because I'm moving, I've moved, that need for approval and that need for belonging, we have often thought how we'll get approval and belonging is through our material things and through our appearance. That's been a kind of a steady theme of our social, I'm going to call it capitalist society. And the other way, I don't have it thoroughly articulated, but it's beingness, it's generosity, it's trust, I guess it boils down to love. So I want my knitting to be an expression of love, and I will still take photographs of it and put it on and show my face, but my face it doesn't need to be a beautiful face. It doesn't need to be a perfect face. It's going to be we've had this conversation before on this channel. I'm just kind of over and bored with getting attention through just aesthetics. Because the most important way to give and receive attention is loving kindness. And it doesn't mean we have all of the answers, but it just means that we keep looking at each other, all of each other, not just the ones that appeal to us, and we look at them and we just soften and open and be that fountain in the beginning. Just keep being that fountain, and nobody can take that from you. Yeah. And I hate to say it, I go to the massive extremes, but in the most perilous of situations you can imagine, your internal landscape is your choice. And if there is a faith that I have, is that if we live from that I've seen it again and again, and I don't want to share every intimate, secret, tender story of mine to prove this to you, but I can just say I've seen things that other people would describe as miracles or acts of that I can't explain. That sounds so vague. So I apologize, but I just feel that love is this powerful force in the universe. And it's false to think we have that our explanations are the entire explanation. They never are. And so
I think I interrupted you when you were getting ready to talk about that community.
Well, that is just it. I mean, this is why I'm here. So I came home for a wedding, and my cousin is a librarian, and I'm moving, and I am moving I'm in a small town of 9,000 people, and I know Richard and no one else. And, and it's a small rural town on the Mississippi River, and it is, I am, how a small rural town is completely and utterly different, not in a quaint way, but in an economic way, like in the way of actual poverty and actual, so I've had my eyes opened to things that it was just, now when I come home and I go to, I come back to Madison and go to a Whole Foods, it's like going to, I can't get over it. I can't get over
the choices and
the actual surreal world mechanisms that brings all of that into a grocery store.
And just the people that are there, all those
the people that are there, all the systems,
meat market, just the
So this is something that I read, and then I stopped reading here. I haven't gotten past this. It says because a lot of what I've heard is what you can do is act locally. So I read this in this book. So why am I convinced that falling in love with your town needs to involve knowing and at least sort of liking your neighbors? Because of this little thing called neighborhood cohesion, a term that social scientists use to describe the level of closeness and connection neighbors feel toward each other. In studies, it's measured by asking people whether they can agree with statements like these. This is a close-knit neighborhood. Isn't it beautiful that the word knit shows up in that?
Knit, yes.
This is a close-knit neighborhood. People around here are willing to help their neighbors. People in this neighborhood generally get along with each other. People in this neighborhood share the same values. My neighbors can be trusted. When people answer yes, it portends positive outcomes for both physical and emotional health. For instance, a recent University of Michigan study found that those who trusted, liked, or spent time with their neighbors were 67% less likely to suffer a heart attack and 48% less likely to suffer a stroke. If they did have a stroke, their survival chances went up significantly. So let me read these things again. Can you agree with these things? This is a close-knit neighborhood. And we've just been reflecting on the changes in our own neighborhood because we've had this house since I was in kindergarten. How many years?
I think it's 47 now this fall. Or
47
something
years.
around
Oh my
that,
gosh, we definitely have to plan a 50th party.
Definitely. You might want to do a 47th. Why wait for 50?
Because it's a big number.
I suppose.
You have to honor the number 50.
Okay.
Yeah.
We moved in 76.
Okay, well then in 26, we should have our party. We should have
next year, so we're already in.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyways, so we have this phenomenon of having online community, but we say, and we go to knitting festivals and we've had community that way, etc. And I guess I strive like in my Patreon, for instance, to make it a genuine community where you feel safe and invited. And when I do knitting events like the retreat or a class or whatever, I try to, it's not a thing I'm an expert on, is to know how much to share and how much to listen and how to preserve some of my energy, but how to foster the kind of community that I want to live in, because I have had this experience over and over and over that loving, there's a genuine healing that study shows to from being in a loving community and having all of you accepted. And
because community means so much. I mean, this is a community that we're doing right now.
It is. This is an act of community.
It is.
This is a bid for me to say all of you are welcome, and this is a bid to say your pain is welcome. And it's a very different. I guess I know this from the teaching that I would do too. Is there was such a difference when you're talking talking points and information. It's very different than shifting into witnessing and beholding and hearing a story. And these are things we can still practice right now. And what I'm hoping is from doing that and from strengthening that and from breaking, not out of any sort of like rational or purely head manifesto of like down with this and up with that. I don't have, but to shift into the place where it's juicy, where serendipities, where ideas come from, where change happens. Those are shifts into love, is what I'm saying. And so, oddly, paradoxically, I don't know, I hesitate to say these things because I am not saying them to say I need praise or recognition. It has nothing to do with that. I'm just reporting that I'm going through my knits and I am saying, who can I give these to? Because I know knitting has this love caught up in it, And so today I'm taking a sweater to a shopkeeper. Today I'm sending in the post office a sweater to a stranger who lost her knits in a fire. And every time I want to promote this sense of we're going to be there for each other, that sense of resilience. And resilience is fueled by decency and love. And I'm giving you this message. I'm telling my personal story, our family story. I have 2 sons who are beautiful young men, and Joe is in an airplane right now heading to New Zealand with a little backpack and some, maybe a hostel reservation.
Yes, he's got a hostel for a week. And he's got, he saved his money all year and, so he's got a little cush of a bank account. And I feel like I just shift into trust. I shift into like, here I am. I'm trusting in the goodwill of people far away from me, that he will be welcomed and he will make friends. And so my responsibility, of course, is to be kind to everybody I encounter who's a stranger, who I don't know their story. And so this is something we can always do. If we're just thinking about us and our fears, that's a contraction. And I feel like that helps promote entropy and staying open. I mean, you can, again, it's like you open and you close and you open and you close. But I've learned from my mother. I've watched her generosity. I've watched, for instance, Richard is a painter and he has like 2 of his paintings and all the rest of them are all over the place. He hasn't kept every painting he's ever made, and
So I want life to move through me. I want to be a feeling being, but I want to be a place where almost like a well for life force to just pass through. So I want to give you a chance because I've talked so much.
Okay.
And I actually know people love hearing from you more than they like hearing from me.
Oh,
well, I don't mean it like that, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so what are you thinking right now?
Well, it's been an exhausting period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't think it's any secret for, you don't have to beat around the bush. I am, balancing from some days. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night in sheer terror, and, watching everything I've ever stood for in my life, coming from a strong union backing family. And I don't want to polarize people, but anyway, just understanding that what I consider the bare, tenets of what decent human beings do. And so there's that global unraveling, and it seems so cruel and unnecessary it's the ruling class taking over. But and I'm not going to go into that, but I guess in my personal life is also the upheavals of coming through my illness and health, and then finding, I'm so grateful for Jackie and Richard and their start. They're saying we found love in this state in our life, and the glimmers in into those little vignettes that she'll send from their home, and learning to cook, and all those things that are just so delightful to me, but still comes with she was always here, closer. And so feeling like the 4 hours away is not that far. Most people would say, oh my God, Sally, get it, but and so in my own personal life and I'm trying to bring it back to I put something up today of recognizing that yesterday Jamie and I took Joe to O'Hare, and it was a lovely experience in humanity, just lovely. He had his first, whoops, I, took my plane reservations out in my nickname, Joe, and my passport says Joseph, and, and that doesn't compute on, and so the man's going, well, you don't have, this isn't coming together the way it's supposed to, and a glitch in his travels, which could have been bad, but anyway, they were good and fixed it and all was well. But the experience of coming home and going out into my art studio, our art studio, and just letting the uncontrollable sobs come, and I recognized that what those tears were tears of just immense, bigger than life gratitude for the time that this young man moved, said, Grandma, can I come stay in the shop? There's a bed, it's outfitted so one could live out there as he has. Can I just stay there and save money for this? I'm going to go to New Zealand. Where the hell that came from, I know not. But anyway, so I said yes, even though I had just made this beautiful creative art studio and spent most of my day in there. And, so my tears were tears of joy that I was able to go, yes, of course, come in here. And then in the process of the last year or two, we have discovered, we meaning all of us, his father, his mother, his aunt, his brother, discovered that, whoa, Joe, not only is he growing up, but he has discovered an art form. He's creating art that just is blowing my mind, blowing all of our mind. And so by opening up my studio and saying, well, of course you can live here, I had the experience that I don't know many grandmothers get of being able to be sharing my art space, which I'm just budding and learning about, my art, which is new to me, this painting, side by side with, I couldn't hardly keep up with framing his art and framing my art. Now I have a shop full of framed art and unframed art that's just like, whoa, and that's the next chapter for both of us, like, where is all this going? And that doesn't matter for today. But just that the tears were of so needed, because I could cry in despair easily. Fear, anxiety, despair. There's nothing that I'm not looking at. There's no person on this earth that I'm not feeling empathy and pain and, where is this going? Uncertainty in so many different ways. But yet the joy and the hope of coming back to what is inside, and knowing I've lived long enough to see that human beings are so surprising in our resilience and our ability to go, oh my God, we can't let this happen to us. And how, when Jackie read that part about community, I went, that's what I can do. Now that my artist self, my young artist, is off an adventure in New Zealand, that studio can be open like my neighbors. I can have a once a week art, come and play and soothe your soul and whatever it takes to get us through these hard times. I have to listen to that inner voice going, do not succumb to anxiety and fear. It will kill you. And it will kill all of us if we succumb to it. We can know it's there, and we have our responsibilities, and we all know what they are. There's no turning away. We all have responsibility to do what we can do. But we also have to build our resilience and our strength and our love and hold each other and bring cookies 2 doors down in my neighborhood, and I won't say why, but I just know that it's important. And just do that. So that's where I'm in. I mean, it's a balancing act. And what I have been doing is every day I reach out to one of my friends, and it's amazing what this community has done, because I have friends in Scotland and Australia and Germany and, California, and, people that I never would have known if it weren't for this gift of communication.
Right.
And if it ends up that we have to find a different way of contacting each other, we will, because we're resilient.
Well, I mean, that's just it. I will go back to actually the grocery girls, watching them be 2 sisters in Canada, talking about their life and being honest. And what was their secret formula? They loved each other.
Yeah, definitely.
Unabashed love for each other. And that's what gave them the courage to just be themselves. And the shift. I mean, knitting is part of that shift into like everyday person media. So if this is, I literally, I want to tell the story of this sweater before we give it away.
Yes, definitely.
And shift into a little, I'm not shifting away.
No.
So this is the Swoncho that, I made when I went to Wool and Honey in Michigan with Caitlin. God, I don't know how many years ago, maybe 5 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And Meg, who was a total stranger from Wool and Cookies, she had a podcast then, she let us stay in her home and invited us to come, and we drove there and we went to an event to meet the grocery girls. And this was a sample. I saw this exact Swoncho as a sample because it was a plucky yarn show, and one of the plucky sisters was there, and I said, I love this, and she said, well, I'll dye these yarns for you. And I remember getting this as a birthday gift for myself, like a special splurge, because it feels amazing and it is incredibly wonderful, and I've worn it and loved it, and now I feel like it looks exactly like, I know this woman who is this beautiful woman, and she has a small business on Monroe Street, and she's as earnest as you can be, and I want to, and I know this will be beautiful on
the
her.
coloring will be.
And I want to give it to her. I don't want to give it to her so she thinks I'm a nice person. I want to give it to her so she knows that there's loving kindness in the world, and that the comfort and the warmth of a hand knit and that expression. And I want to keep giving those expressions out to the world. You know, and this that I'm wearing, Charlene knit this. This is yarn that was given to me by Pearl Soho, and I got to meet with the people at Pearl Soho and talk to them about this pattern, and I so admire I so admire their yarns and their planning and their, everything is really hard to do, and when you see somebody doing something so well, it's just it's astonishing. So I was very thrilled to get to work with them, and this is the Skinny Pop scarf, but Charlene I love her so much, and she knows herself so well. And so I designed this to be something that she would wear, and so this is with the note yarns, and she came to visit me during the Bounty residency, and we went and saw Mario together, and he she has a jacket that her father, who was like her dearest person, and he's not alive anymore, he got in Ireland, and Mario refit it so Charlene can wear it. So I have that now, and I'm taking it and putting it in a box with this and mailing it back to Charlene. But I definitely want to knit this myself because it just completely reminds me of the Bounty and the residency.
Oh, it's just gorgeous.
And I love the whole Charlene and I twin. I always love twinning, and you have a variation. So I have a pattern called Skinny Pop. I was just saying this, like Macy, who is, I think she's Little Miss Knits on Instagram. She's making one of these right now, and she's happy making it. And if she's happy, engaged in doing something, and it's soothing and giving her comfort, and I've heard that I'll show you the Skinny Pops. Then I'm thrilled.
Oh, Lily, you should have seen her.
Yeah, but you talk about yours quick, and I'll get
okay. Yes, what I'm doing, Jackie's always tried to find things for me to do with my spin cycle collection that I have, my dream state. And I'm a very slow knitter, because knitting is now about the third thing down on my list.
Because you watercolor and quilt.
I do watercolor and then fabric quilts. And so, but there's something very calming about this pattern. And so she suggested, why don't you use the what is it, Note?
Yes.
Which is the softest.
This is the Pearl Soho Note.
Yeah.
So is this.
So what I'm doing is I'm running, I think this is only 2 skeins of Dream State so far. I'm running from the orange and, warm colors into the cool colors. And, God, it's just such a soothing, one by one knit, and I just love it. I took it to the airport, on the ride down, and just thoroughly enjoyed that while I was doing my anxiety of like, oh my God, is he going to be okay? I'm going to miss him, and all that stuff. Like, oh, Joe's really leaving. What am I going to do? Is all knit into here. And then the rest of it will be like, wow, he's in Auckland. He's looking at the ocean. He's excited about the southern sky and the stars. He showed me a picture of it.
Because the southern sky is totally different.
Yeah, he told me. He showed me a picture.
The crescent's the other way.
Yes, he told me. He said, I can't wait to see that. So I'm like, Lord of the Rings has been what he's raised on. So, and those mountains, whatever. So he's there. And he'll be there this afternoon at 4:40, something like that, our time. Wow. Yeah, so that's in this knit.
Right. I'm going to show you the other ones too.
Oh, yes. They're so beautiful.
So this is what started it all off was...
I love that.
The 9-note bundles, which are these... This is what I mean by so admiring what they're doing. They're these fades. And they're these absolutely glorious fades, but I really, really, really worked hard on the math, and I put in the Fibonacci sequence of these pops in particular, in adherence to those numbers 2, 3, 5, 8. And what's such a delight is just the way the colors wrap around and so it's very fun to put together.
It has just a gorgeous feel.
It feels,
yeah,
the ribbing is so delicious. And they're open tubes. Oh, look at that. I didn't weave in. I have woven in my ends, but whatever. They're open tubes. And they're heavy and delicious and incredibly warm. And this is the one I started in Kristen of Cozy Maids Things kitchen at Rhinebeck. And because I'd made all of these shimmer shrugs for shrug season, and I loved these 9-note bundles so much. And I'm not even done with how much I love them. And then I took another set with me to England when I went to England. Mom was modeling this one on Instagram.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
This is a more sober palette.
But that looks like when you were sending pictures back of the being along the river with the stone walls and then the little cottage houses and all their different colors.
Dartmouth, yeah. I put all of those pictures in reels on Instagram. It's very, sometimes it's an overlap, but sometimes YouTube people aren't Instagram people. So there's lots of footage on Instagram. But there's this one. And then they came out with a new color while I was still working on the pattern, juniper. And I just thought juniper was such a beautiful color and such a lovely expression. So I did that one too. And I'll put some footage in because my mom and sister and I are all wearing these. Okay, what's happening tonight, Mom?
Well, tonight we're having Heron and a couple of his friends over to have birthday dinner. Joe is heading off to have a Super Bowl party with his friends, his last night in town before he heads to New Zealand.
And I was going to say, what's happening tomorrow to Jamie? What's happening tomorrow, Jamie?
Joe is heading off across the world to an adventure in New Zealand.
Yeah, pretty big
it's exciting.
Step. Yes, it is exciting.
What do you? I mean, it's funny because Lily moved out and Joe's going to New Zealand. My hope was that these skinny pops, like Lily has one too. She's at Trader Joe's right now. I was hoping that these would be a fun way of, even though I'm not living at home, we would all have the same scarf together.
Oh, I know. It's fun. I've enjoyed it. And I'm making one myself.
So good.
So.
You're making one yourself. Jamie, do you want to show off your t-shirt? Because you always have such good t-shirts.
Well, it is Love Week, so
Oh,
love is all around.
oh, that's
And
sweet.
love's
And
the
there's
answer.
and love is here and alive and well in this household today, even though we're feeling a little bit
Sad. But
sad.
that's the way it works. Families love each other, and then they let each other grow.
Yeah, I know. I'm very happy about his adventure, but So I'm glad that we also have Heron's birthday this afternoon or this evening.
And if you happen to live in New Zealand,
Yeah.
Joe will be there.
And he's,
And he looks exactly like me.
Yeah, so if you see this
If
tall,
you see me as a boy,
tall guy with a little bit of,
at 21,
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. Because I will say I was offered a senior citizen discount when I took Joe and Heron to the movies last night. I took
Is that
them
the
to
first time that's
Bob
happened?
Dylan. Yes, it's the first time.
And you don't
that's-
even qualify.
And then I was indignant, and I was like, I'm not a senior citizen. And Joe was like, Mom, you should have taken the discount.
Right, just say sure.
Yeah, but I didn't. But
Yeah.
anyways, this is Skinny Pop. Thank you for modeling, ladies. Thank you for wearing.
Oh,
and
it's lovely.
they're fun because,
And
however,
they feel amazing.
they do feel amazing.
They do feel
I
amazing.
mean, it is so cold here, and you put one on, and you're just like,
It's just cozy.
Well, thanks everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, God.
They're
it's
just
beautiful.
so beautiful. I can't get over them. And then finally, I made one for Richard, and he wears all of this gray, or not gray, brown and green, like brown and green and brown and green and brown and green. And so I wanted to, let's see if I have a picture of it. So I took scraps, and there's just so much brown and green in it, and so I also wanted to be cognizant of when I write my patterns, I try to give lots of options so that if you want a scrappy option,
Yeah, you can go into your stash and just...
But if you do choose to use the 9-note bundles or the note, I have an affiliate link, and that helps me. So, but I don't, do whatever feels right to you. And so I write the pattern so that you have lots of choices. And
Well, that's like this is, I mean, it's got my dream state, and it's just basically going to end up 2 skeins of dream state.
and again, it's an act of I don't know what constitutes pattern worthiness. I have just devoted so much energy to this idea, and while it's a simple idea, it was really rewarding because Lily is making a scrap version.
Oh, she's so
And
excited.
I showed her, how I did my scrap, because there's this play with values that's in the pattern that you see, and she's playing around with it, and even just the number of stitches is all worked out because they're prime numbers, and so when you use sets of prime numbers, there's just something about the proportions that are just so right. And so I made it into a pattern.
Well, just the very fact when you're talking, Rhinebeck was what, the end of October. And we are in the just first week of, maybe second week of February. You just have to do the math on that to go, wow, Jackie,
Yeah.
how many of these,
1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I knit
plus
4.
falling in love, moving, coming, being in
Being in
England,
England.
coming, and it's just like, wow, So yes, a lot of work goes into
Yes,
this.
there was a ton of work and a joy to do. And the first thing on my needles, other than that, has been just to show this
Yeah,
has
that's
been
beautiful.
the Balan cardigan is the other thing. I have the back done, and this is the front, and this is the long version. And anyways, I don't really want to talk about that a lot right now, other than to say it was interesting because it was a dilemma about what to knit right now, because these are so, there's something very soothing about this little tube and the little ribbing in a tube.
Well,
and
because
the
it
color,
changed colors. So it's like you're knitting, but then it's not like, like even the shrugs, they're so big around that when it takes a long time to get. But this really doesn't take that long. I am like a row away from being able to pick this delicious yarn up and go, what's going to happen to my dream state?
Yeah, so it has a lot of momentum and in the actual practice of knitting it. And it's very soothing. Like this sweater is not soothing because I have a lot of questions as I go, and I'm literally having, oh, look at you. I'm literally having to like have faith that, I'll be able to figure it out.
Isn't that going to be gorgeous?
Oh, it's going to be stunning, Mom. It looks so beautiful with your hair and everything.
And so just in terms of knitting, because the knitting things that I love is the fact that I'm short and that I can alter things. We all have different bodies, and that's the thing about making your own clothes and your own knitting, that you can proportion it. And so when I'm making my own, which is, I knit so much looser. This is just everybody knits differently. I knit so much looser, so even my fabric is looser, isn't it? I will probably do this one. I think it's going to turn out shorter anyway, because there's no sense in going beyond this skein. Because what it is the color path of those two skeins is what I'm finding interesting. I also wear the one that you gave me gloriously, especially when you're outside in the winter, because who doesn't want a scarf that you can fling around you?
Right. That's what Richard loves about it, is he says most of the scarves he buys or he's bought, they're too short to fling. I have to say this. This is something that I think is so important in any groups of people. We all, each and every single one of us, have gifts and capacities that are unique to us. Every single one of us. We're like snowflakes, sands on the beach, all of that stuff. And when you're in a group, you don't want to have a homogeneous group. Right.
You want a group that has diversity. And what Jackie brings to this family group, when she came home on Friday, and you were when you came through the door, it was like, oh my God, there's our vitality, our poet, our person that will get us dancing, our energy. We're all wonderful individually, but what you add to the family is vital. And it's just funny when you're not here. I don't think to turn the sonos way up high and get, but then I go like, what would Jackie do? I'm lonely. I miss her. Crank up the stereo and do a little bit of dancing.
Right. We were sad for a second, and Jamie had us do what was it called?
The cha-cha slide, yeah.
So whatever, Yeah. Right. I think it feels like so old, but I will say I've read all of the mean things that have been said about me from doing the podcast, and they've hurt, but they're not going to stop me. But sometimes they're in there and they're like, who do you think you are? Why should you sell anything? And it's just it always has to just I can't pretend it didn't exist. I don't like to Pollyanna things, and I would say that there's been times I've been deeply hurt by the knitting community, but I have been given so much more love than.
And you know what I want to say also about that experience is because I tend to, you don't dig into the, like I do a lot of Instagram scrolling. I have more like free time, something, whatever. And I'll be in and I'll see the same thing happen to people just like you. I admire them out there. And then you go down the columns and there'll be people and they put just shitty things to say. Just shitty. Like, like I can remember being raised where if you don't have something nice to say about somebody, don't say it. That was what my mother would always say. It was always encouraged, You're not going to agree with everything somebody says, but, do you really, unless somebody says, I really want to, I'm open to your opinion. I want it, I want to change this about myself. Then, like we don't have to always go, well, wow, yeah,
Right.
And so we do that with each other. We're always challenging each other to, why are you thinking that? Or wait a minute, did you hear what you said? And I think that for any of you that are dealing with that kind of stuff out, because I know there's a lot of it going on now. And it's just important to recognize not only are there trolls out there that are doing hideous things that from different countries than ours and, and all that.
But our own countries.
Yeah, but in our own, what I'm saying is that they're coming from who knows what. They're generated from, that kind of stuff. But I guess the thing is just to, stay true, to recognize that I have a right to be here. I have a right to share. I won't do it perfectly, but the fact that I even have the courage to get on here and share is a big step, because that I've grown so much from what other people have shared. And I feel like there are people out there in the world, in the country, in the town I live in, whatever, that I can now feel like I could go, I know you. I know you. You have opened up to me. It's like our humanity and our hearts are so important right now. And so just be gentle with yourself.
Yes. Well, it does go, thank you for that, because I hesitate ever to bring anything up like that. And at the same time, it's just because it's too me-centered. And I don't want this podcast, actually, it's not, I can fulfill myself in my own private life in a way. I'm hoping that it's a bid to give something to, because I have the gift of my mother is alive and well, and I love and adore her, and she unconditionally loves me. Her mother unconditionally loved her. She unconditionally, my sister loves my boys. There's just been so much love that it's like, that really, I want to put that love out there, and I guess choose what. And so I do. I think you choose what to focus on. If no, I don't mean that. So let's talk about this. When I was going through that time at the beginning of the podcast, I got a new teaching partner from California, Seema, and she was like an amazing angel in my life and such a loving force. And she's worried right now.
Yes.
And I literally must send her a knit.
Yes, definitely.
So she can be wrapped in my love of her. And it's funny because it's sitting right there. This is perfect for Seema. So let me show you this.
It is perfect.
So I'm going to...
Oh my God, it's perfect.
I'm going to send this to Seema. So this was from my very first Rhinebeck. And
West Knit.
It was West Knits, and I feel like it's
Seriously,
Farmers Daughters Fibers, Seriously Holey. And it's absolutely glorious and perfect and wonderful. I'll put it on. But I want the people in my life to know I love them more than I want a closet full of knits. It's what I want right now. So I'm sending this to Seema. She was my salvation during that time on a daily basis.
And she is hurting.
And she's hurting. So this is going to her today.
Yeah.
And it's something I can do because there is something in these things that has my life force and my love. And and that's what this, I hope. So that's what we're trying to do. And yes, I can't stop her pain. And no, but I can show my love. So I just want to go back to the poem again.
Okay.
And in the beginning, this is from Alexandra, who lives in Portugal, who's this beautiful woman, and she shared this. And it's Robert Lax's prologue to the Circus of the Sun. And in the beginning was love. Love made a sphere, and all things grew within it. We're in that sphere right now. The sphere then encompassed beginnings and endings, beginning and end. Love had a compass whose whirling dance traced out a sphere of love in the void. In the center thereof rose a fountain. I trust that. I believe that. Nothing that's happened has stopped me from believing that. I believe that with my whole being. So, I don't know. That's it. So thank you for tuning in. And anything you want to say before we go, Mom?
Nothing other than I just want to say, keep sharing your voice out there. You know, everybody has different experiences, different things to offer, different ways of going about their day, and everything that we do in a positive, moving forward, holding each other is how we're going to survive. And, you know, we can see it in the past. We just have to hold our hearts open. And I'm going to, you know, and also that old time worn, you know, stay in the moment. It does you no good to allow yourself to go in to fear, and there will be, you know, the opposite of fear is courage. Isn't that the same? If I remember right?
I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I have no, you know, I don't have any answers. All I've got to say is day at a time.
But the lived feeling, because those are words and expressions.
They're just words, yeah.
But the lived feeling of love. So I just want to end with I'm going to take a moment of silence and then I'm going to turn it off. So we're going to close our eyes.
Okay.
I mean, and think about the people you love. Yeah. And let that give you courage to listen and be brave and act in love, you know. And it's a creative act to be loving, you know, how to express it. So, and it comes from both doing and non-doing. It comes from listening. And I will say the reason why I told the story of my children's father's medical tragedy is because the wounds are there, and and so is love.
And love heals.
Okay. Love you. Bye.